Former Vice President Joe Biden committing, as Peter said, to picking a woman as his running mate. Sanders saying he's likely to do the same. But that's not all they promised. Let's break down the key takeaways with tonight's Power Panel. The five, co-host Juan Williams, Media Buzz host Howard Kurtz, and Fox News contributor Karl Rove. Welcome to all of you on the special Sunday night coverage.
Good to be here.
Shannon?
Okay, Howie, you are always great at breaking things down for us after the fact. What did you see tonight? What stood out to you?
Shannon, there was a striking contrast in the very opening moments in talking about the coronavirus. Joe Biden projected empathy. Bernie Sanders attacked President Trump. Take a look.
First of all, my heart goes out to those who have already lost someone or those who are suffering from the virus. And this is bigger than any one of us. This calls for a national rallying to everybody move together.
First thing we have got to do, whether or not I'm president, is to shut this president up right now, because he is undermining the doctors and the scientists who are trying to help the American people.
Bernie Sanders, by the way, talked about Medicare for all and greedy insurers and drug companies so often. It sounded like he was just updating his talking points that he's been doing for the last year for the coronavirus era. Now, it was so senatorial for these two white-haired gentlemen that when the only time in the debate it really got heated was over a battle over the budget and Social Security from a decade ago. Take a listen.
My Lord, Bernie, you're running ads saying I'm opposed to Social Security, that PolitiFact says is a flat lie, and that the Washington Post said is a flat lie.
When Joe and others were enamored with the so-called bold Sipset effort, which included cuts to Social Security or raising the retirement age, I formed, along with people like Barbara Boxer, the Defending Social Security caucus to say no.
The Simpson-Bowles Commission was back in 2010. Most voters, I think, don't even remember it. Shannon.
Yeah, it rings a bell. Okay, Juan, I want to bring you in here because this is it. I mean, this is down to these two final Democrats at this point. Right. Something else the former vice president promised to do was to, if he gets a first opening on the Supreme Court, to name an African-American female. A lot of people went directly to Kamala Harris, and we're looking at some other folks. But Professor Jonathan Turley, who we have on quite a bit, people know him. He's very well respected. He says this: Biden's pledge to impose a threshold requirement for the race and gender of the next nominee is troubling. Such an absolute requirement would be unconstitutional if used for the admission to a public college, yet it would be used for admission to the court that created that rule. Do you feel like it's pandering? Is it patronizing? Or do you think, listen, this is just one of his favorite ideas because he's talked about it before?
Oh, I think it's politics. I don't think there's any getting away from it. Obviously, the African-American vote was crucial to him in terms of reviving his chances, in fact, taking him to the point now where he is the leader in this nomination fight for the Democrats. And historically, of course, there's only been two black people on the Supreme Court and never a black woman. So I think from the Biden perspective, he is speaking specifically to blacks, but also to black women. I think larger agenda here to, I think, white suburban women as well, the idea that you'd get a woman. And of course, the counter idea would be, oh yeah, I mean, nobody points out when you put a white man on the court. They don't say, oh, gee, that's another white man. It's just, well, kind of accepted. And it's certainly the case that if you look at President Trump's appointees, you would say that they were conservatives and on the Federalist list of potential nominees. So there's all sorts of litmus tests. I think it's very difficult. I think it's regrettable that we apply these kind of criteria to nominees for the court because you would hope that you would get the best people, period.
Just best qualified.
Right.
Who most lines up with whatever
But I'm just saying, it's politics
is.
today, you know?
Yeah, it is politics. Okay, so another issue that came up tonight was fracking. And they were really, we know where Bernie is on this. It's a little trickier for the former vice president. He's from Pennsylvania. It's very important there. Tom Nichols, who describes himself, he's an author, but he says he's ex-GOP, never Trumper. He was watching and tweeting tonight. He says, Biden's from Pennsylvania originally and is not nearly stupid enough to ban fracking while he's fighting a narrow battle in the Electoral College. And Bernie knows this, but he's going to push Biden to commit electoral suicide on this issue anyway. Karl, he said no new fracking, so he did leave some room there tonight.
Well, but it's a big mistake because when you drill a well, what he's essentially saying is the only wells they can use fracking are the wells that are in existence, and that means no more fracking because those wells will, after a period of time, run out and they won't be able to be replaced with new production. So big, big mistake, but it is a sign. Look, this debate didn't change the fundamental direction of the race. It was a good debate, best one we've had so far. Both men got in their shots, but it's not going to change the fundamental direction of the debate. But so much tonight tonight, Joe Biden was attempting to sort of basically placate the left of his party, and that may help him in the short run. I'm going to appoint a woman as my running mate. I'm going to appoint a black woman to the Supreme Court. No new fracking. I'm opposed to sanctuary cities. I'm now going to endorse Elizabeth Warren's bankruptcy bill, which is the opposite of what I did when I was in the Senate. Oh, I'm now in favor of free college. All those things may help him in the short run, but if he is the Democratic nominee, my sense is most, if not all of those things, maybe the exception of appointing a woman as his running mate, that's going to stand on its own. But the rest of these things are going to create problems for him, I think, with the group of people who are up for grabs, particularly in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Ohio.
Yeah, and President Trump snuck up on them the last time in 2016 in some of these really important states. They know better this time, and they know they have to invest there if they want to bring those states back and win the Electoral College. Back to the Democrat side, I want to go through very quickly and get all of you to give me your blurb on what you thought of the format tonight, because a lot of people on Twitter are like, this is great. No booing and cheering and slowing things down in the audience. It seemed more under control. It's easier when you only have two people. But Howie, we'll start with you. What'd you think?
It drained some of the drama, but CNN's Jake Tapper and Dana Besh were smart to let them mostly debate each other. What really also struck me in this first coronavirus debate is they didn't really take any personal shots at each other. Bernie can do delegate math. He knows Joe Biden is the likely nominee, and Biden knows he'll need Sanders supporters. And I think without a screaming audience, they were able to keep it pretty civil.
Juan?
Well, I think the key for me was, again, going back to coronavirus, how they dealt with this. And I think the big point scored by Biden is we need results, not revolution. I think that would be, for me, the headline type of quote I would take away. And to what we just heard from Howie, I think going into this, there was a lot of question about Biden going one-on-one against Sanders. Would he have a flub? Would there be a gaffe that would contribute to all the talk about, oh, gee, he's not mentally stable? You know, I just think that was offensive in the first place. But clearly tonight, there was no such slip-up for Joe Biden.
Well, Karl, did the former vice president do enough to reach out to those Bernie Sanders voters who, in our Fox News voter analysis, many of them, a good chunk of them, say, if Biden's the guy, I'm not voting for him?
Yeah. Look, I think there are two ways to go after the Sanders voters. One is to do what he did tonight. I agree with you on no new fracking. I agree with you on this. I agree with you on that. I'm going to do the things that I agree with Elizabeth Warren's bankruptcy bill. I agree with you, Bernie, on free college. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is to go after Trump and to basically say, which he did at one point tonight, say the question is whether we're going to beat Trump. In fact, he said he laid it up pretty good. I'm going to if I lose to Bernie, I'm going to support Bernie because the real threat is Donald Trump. I hope Bernie does the same to me. For me, if I win the nomination, and Bernie, of course, was forced to say, of course, we're going to do this. But at the end of the day, I think it's a mistake to do what he did tonight, which is to say, I'm moving to the left. I'm going to try and placate you by looking like I'm Bernie light. And I don't think that's going to go very far. I do agree with Juan, absolutely. That argument of results versus revolution, I think that was one of the stronger themes that Biden hit during the evening. I'm not certain, though, that I'd agree that this wasn't marked by, both of these men forgot sometimes what they were talking about. Bernie talked about Ebola when it was coronavirus. And there were a couple of instances where Biden would repeat himself. We saw two old guys giving it their best tonight, and frankly, the older guy in this, I think, looked younger. That is to say, Bernie, I think, gave a more forceful presentation, but it's not going to change the outcome of the delegate selection process for the upcoming primaries.
Yeah, it's the last debate before that next round of primaries, so we'll see what voters think. Karl, Juan, and Howard, thank you very much for being with us late.